Hello dear children, welcome you all back to science class. In today's class, we are going to begin with the new chapter, that is your 9th chapter, Interdependence in Living Beings, Plants and Animals. Now, can you think of some of the living components that are present in the environment around you? Yes, we know that plants and animals are the living components that are present in the environment around us. Now, what about non-living components? Are there any non-living things around us? Yes, non-living components like air, soil, water, and sunlight are also present in the environment around us. Now, do you think these living components will depend on these non-living components for their survival? Yes, living components of the environment will depend on non-living things. That is, living components like plants and animals, they depend on non-living components like air, soil, water, and sunlight. This is essential for their survival. So, living components of the environment, they depend on other living components and they also depend on non-living components. So this dependence of living components on other living components and dependence of living components on non-living components is known as interdependence. So we know that plants and animals, they are dependent on each other. That is, living components are dependent on each other. They are also dependent on non-living components. Now, this dependence of living components on other living components and also on non-living components is known as interdependence. Now, let us learn in detail about the living components that are present in the environment around us. So, we have just learned that plants and animals are the living components that are present around us. So, other than plants and animals, microorganisms are also living components that are present in the environment around us. So plants, animals and microorganisms like bacteria, fungi, viruses are the living components that are present in the environment around us. Now let us learn about each of these living components one by one, starting with plants. Now, we know that there are different types of plants that are there around us, like herbs, shrubs, trees, etc. So, we also know that these plants that they live either in land or in water. So, plants generally live in land and they also live in water. Do you think these plants can move from one place to another place? No, we know that plants generally remain fixed at their positions, which means they do not move from one place to another place. Now, how do they prepare food? We have already learned that plants prepare their own food by the process of photosynthesis. But plants need non-living components like water, minerals, sunlight, and carbon dioxide in order to prepare food. So we have just learned that plant is a living component, but it depends on non-living component like water, minerals, sunlight and carbon dioxide in order to prepare food by the process of photosynthesis. For example, plants absorb water from the soil, isn't it? Yes. So plant, which is a living component, it depends on non-living component, that is water and soil, in order to prepare food. Now plants also need carbon dioxide for the process of photosynthesis. Now again, carbon dioxide is present in the air. So air again is a non-living component. So from this we have understood that plants which are a living component will depend on non-living components in order to prepare food and also for their survival. Now, let us have a look at the next living component, that is animals. Now, let us learn about the next living component that is present in the environment around us. They are animals. Just like plants, there are different types of animals also that are present in the environment around us. Now, do you think just like plants, animals live only on land and water? No, animals live on land, water, trees, air and soil. Now we have learned that in case of plants, plants do not move from one place to another place. They remain fixed at their own position. But in case of animals, animals move from one place to another place in search of food and shelter. So they do not remain fixed at their own position. Now, like plants, animals cannot prepare their own food. So they depend on plants and other animals for their food. So animals cannot prepare their own food, but they eat plants and they also depend on other animals for their food. So here we have seen that animals which are living things, they depend on other living things like plants and animals in order to survive. So animals depend on plants and other animals for their food. They also depend on water and air in order to breathe. Now, we know that food, water and air are essential for animals' survival also. So animals which are living things, they depend on non-living components like water and air. Now they take in oxygen and they give out carbon dioxide during the process of breathing. So here we have seen that animals also depend on other living components and they depend on non-living components also for their survival. Now let us have a look at microorganisms. So microorganisms are also living components. Have you ever heard of these word microorganism? Can you think of some of the examples of microorganisms? Some of the examples of microorganisms are bacteria, fungi, viruses, etc. So these are all microorganisms. So microorganisms are tiny organisms which we cannot even see with our naked eye. Now, where do you think these microorganisms live? Microorganisms live everywhere around us. That is, they live on land, water, air, and even in our body. We are now very much familiar with the microorganism coronavirus, isn't it? Yes, that is again a virus which is nothing but a microorganism. So microorganisms, they can live on land, water, air, and even in our body. Now, how do you think these microorganisms eat food? These microorganisms, they depend on dead plants and animals for their food. So these microorganisms, they will feed on dead plants and animals and they will release nutrients from these plants and animals into the soil. Now these nutrients, they are there in the soil. Now these nutrients are required by plants when they prepare food by the process of photosynthesis. So here we have seen that microorganisms will depend on dead plants and animals for their food. Now these microorganisms will release nutrients which are non-living things. Now these nutrients, they are now released into the soil and nutrients are essential for plants in order to prepare food by the process of photosynthesis. So here again we see that living things depend on other living things, and they also depend on non-living things for their survival.